So we need to exhort Senator McConnell single-handedly. He can change this debate and get sensible gun reform going in our country. So we must develop that action that has overwhelming support from all Americans, and we must see action from Senator McConnell, the Republican senators in Washington, D.C. So, Senator McConnell, we need you to use the immense power you have to save lives, to choose lives, and stand up to the gun lobby. And if enough isn't enough, how much is it going to take for there to be enough? How many more people do we have to lose? So after the program at the Federal Building, we're going to march back to these steps for a performance by the real young prodigies. Let's hear it for the prodigies. But first, let's hear from Soliana Mespin, a recent graduate of Eastern High School, who will be studying sociology and Pan-African studies at U of L. Please welcome Soliana.
Hello. My name is Soliana Mespin, and I'm 18 years old. I serve on the Mayor's Youth Council and just recently the Kentucky Board of Education. I'm also a graduate of Eastern High School, a school where 3 students were shot at a bus stop and 1 was killed earlier in the year. I'm sorry we as youth and allies have to take on this fight. A fight where we have to beg, urge, and plead for our deepest pains to be simply acknowledged. Where we have to tirelessly prove that our livelihoods are worthy and where we are reminded of an emotionally taxing and upsetting reality that is our nation. This is very much pain-invoking, as most of us come here carrying the loss and legacy of a loved one victim to gun violence. We know this pain and system all too well, but we are not stagnant. In every opportunity, we shall continue to denounce perpetrators and systems that enable them to continue. What we are doing today and every day is the answer to liberation that we will obtain for those we mourn and those we welcome. So as youth, as mothers, as sons, as daughters, as uncles, and as neighbors, may we transcend the pain and damage in our communities to continuously advocate alongside one another and demand justice. No matter the narrative or perception, we as youth have the ability to change systems, despite what those in power have to say. The combination of solutions, approaches, and our willingness will directly make strides in securing equitable gun safety laws. The power of our collective action will engrave the notion that youth can and will effectively build a prevention infrastructure that institutions will adopt for years to come. Yes. We will lead the effort in community restoration to heal and invest amongst ourselves so that we can feel safe in our schools, safe in our churches, safe walking down the street, and safe living our lives. We are equipped and willing to fight, and we just ask that policymakers do what they were elected to do, which is enforce that all citizens live in its impact. I urge policymakers to make an effort in valuing, not listening, but valuing the perspectives of victims, survivors, their families, and communities. I urge them to leave behind a rhetoric or agenda that prevents their contribution to the progression of gun control. I urge them to actively seek for updated strategies and establish bipartisan support. And I urge them to recognize the layered and complex reality of gun violence in our communities. We need you to stop prioritizing guns over people. There are many avenues to recognizing how much of a detriment our current system is. If people in power continue to ignore their urgency, then we will simply vote them out. And if we are unable to vote just yet, we will campaign and raise our voices and work endlessly to replace you with somebody who prioritizes our lives. We do not have the same seats. Those in power have shiny, elevated seats in fancy buildings. We have seats in a classroom that are designed as a shield in case of an active shooter. We have proven that no matter the seat, anybody has the ability to advocate for the preservation and health of our people. In Louisville, the highest annual toll of youth injured or killed by gunfire was 2021, and that toll is only subject to rise this year. We are in a crisis. We have to understand the nature of Louisville gun violence in order to effectively combat it. We have to establish local policies, solutions, and conduct cross-organizational outreach and support. This requires an effort on all fronts and all perspectives. To my fellow youth, especially those in underserved areas and communities of color, may we rise above an oppressive system. May we fight to dismantle discriminatory policies and practices. May we remain connected in our message, and most of all, may we prioritize our well-being and find solace in this evolving movement of change.
Please welcome to the podium the country's best congressman, John Yarmouth. Hello, everybody. I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to particularly thank all the young people who are here today. 4 years ago, after the Parkland shooting, the first March for Our Lives occurred in Louisville. It was a miserable day, as I recall. Greg and I were marching with all these young people, and as we walked up Main Street, we looked at each other and we started to get emotional because we said, there is hope. These young people give us hope. They give us hope today. Now, some of you know that for the last 4 years, every day that I've gone to work in Congress, I've worn an F on my lapel. That's my F rating, my failing grade from the National Rifle Association. Which I proudly wear. Well, today, I supersized it. So when I wear this, a lot of people say, is that like F-U? And I said, when it comes to the NRA, yes it is. You know, Greg mentioned the fact that we've got one guy who happens to live in this community who has single-handedly prevented responsible gun safety legislation from coming to the floor of the United States Senate. We passed it in the House. We just voted for a package of 7 bills last week. But not only are important steps that we can take to prevent gun deaths, not everyone, but how many does it have to prevent before it's worth doing? Right? I mean, are 10 enough, 100 enough, 1,000 enough? Anyway, we did that. And with the measures we passed, every one of them is supported by more than 60% of the American people. Some of those proposals upward of 85% of the American people. And most of them even supported by a majority of the NRA membership. And Mitch McConnell won't let them come to a vote on the Senate floor. But let's not overlook our other senator who is not exactly and we've got a chance to do something this November to Ron Paul.
listen to this. There's a sign down there that said stop the BS or something, which we call BS. We do. And every day when we listen to these people on the floor trying to come up with lame excuses for why they can't support common sense gun safety legislation, your head will spin. Just the latest one, John Thune, South Dakota. Well, my people in South Dakota, they need AR-15s to get rid of the prairie dogs. Prairie dogs are this big. Another Republican U.S. senator says, oh, we need AR-15s to shoot feral pigs in Louisiana. Come on, at least try harder. At least try harder. And this is the biggest thing we have to call BS on. When people say this is about the Second Amendment, this is about the Constitution, call BS. It's not about that. It's about gun sales. This is about gun sales. I have to repeat something that one of my colleagues said the other day. He was challenging Republicans in a hearing, and he said, whose side are you on, the kids or the killers? The kids or the killers? I know which side we're on. And we have to make sure, and we have to pose that question to anybody who tries to defend a position opposing good, common sense gun legislation. So I'm going to keep working. I got not quite 7 months left. One of the things that I was asked the other day, what are some of your big disappointments from your 16 years in Congress? And I said my biggest one is that we haven't been able to do anything on gun safety. I hope that in the next 6.5 months that we can finally get something done. But even if we get something passed, it's not going to be nearly enough. It's not going to be anywhere near what we need to do to address the problem of insanity with guns in this country. So we're going to have to keep fighting, we're going to have to keep marching, and we're going to have to keep raising our voices, because these kids, we don't want these kids to end up like the kids in Uvalde or so many other places. You know, this has become very personal to me. I have a not quite 3-year-old grandson, and I also now have a 1-day-old grandson. And I don't want JD or Rory to have to worry when they go to daycare or school about being gunned down by a lunatic with a weapon that was designed for military use, not for self-protection, not for killing feral pigs or prairie dogs, but to murder human beings. It's time to act. Enough is enough. Thank you all for being here. Let's keep the fight.